Welcome to the Transformation Leaders Podcast. I'm Tony Lockwood and I'm delighted that you could join me on this latest episode. Each episode takes the form of a discussion with a leader who openly shares their experiences of leading organisations through the transformation journey. Today, I'm joined on the virtual sofa by Shaun Taylor, a transformation leader that has a rich history of delivering significant global programmes. During this episode, he shares many examples that support his belief that transformation needn't be complex or stressful. Let's get right into it now. Well, hi, Shaun. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the Transformation Leaders Podcast. It's great to have you here. Let's start, as we always do, by introducing yourself, letting the listeners know a little bit about your background, and answering that question about how you first moved into the world of change and transformation.
Cool. Well, first, thanks for inviting me, Tony. It's a pleasure to be here today. I started my career in project management. Quickly discovered a talent to recover failing projects and programs. And ultimately, this took me into both the Chief Information Officer and Chief Transformation Officer roles. And more recently, a pivot into the Chief Operating Officer seat. I quickly got involved in change and transformation at a really early stage in my career. And I realized it was something that I had a passion for, something I enjoyed, something you could actually see and make a difference in. Over the last decade, I've been working as an interim. I've been fortunate enough to work in over 30 countries and delivering significant value and transformational change into those countries. Working across, again, a diverse sector of industries, from telco to insurance, business, software, advertising, agrochemical, manufacturing, through to aerospace. One of the interesting programs was actually in the business software space, where I implemented an ERP company's own ERP system internally for them as part of a recovery program. I got to do some great things. Managed to spend a year living in Jamaica, living in Kingston, where I ultimately met my wife. So, good things come out of our nomadic lifestyles as well.
Absolutely. I think we could probably fill a whole episode talking about your experiences in Jamaica, but let's not go there. The first question that we always ask, so we get the context of the rest of the session, is to get an understanding of how you define transformation, because it's so many different things to so many different people.
It is, and I think it's one of those words that gets routinely misused. People regularly say they've delivered multiple transformations, but the key is to understand what the difference is between transformation and change.
Yeah. And
to me, change management is about the delivery of a set of defined initiatives in a functional setting, whereas transformation is a wider set of cross-functional transformation themes that deliver structural change. They redesign the operating model. They drive digitalization to create key differentiators and leverage new growth models. Transformation is organizational wide. It is not, a functional change point.
Yeah. It's an interesting perspective. A lot of people talk about size and complexity, but I think it is. It doesn't necessarily need to be long. It doesn't necessarily need to be that complex. But by definition, if it's covering multiple functions, as you say, it can lead to transformational outcomes, can't it? So.
Yeah, to me, it's about how you go about improving a business through a focused set of transformation themes. It's about delivering sustainable and breakthrough performance that ultimately enables you to outperform the competition. What it's not about is just ruthless cost-cutting or structural change that is often done in a way that actually the cost and the change point just washes back into the business. This is why I think getting an understanding of what transformation means and differentiating it between change and transformation is so critical.
Yes. And I find that's, although we talk about it on the podcast a lot and have many different variations, I find it's important when you're going into an organisation for the very first time to get alignment across the senior team, the exec team, about that definition, because often you find that the chief exec might be expecting one thing and the chief operating officer or CTO is expecting something different from that word transformation. Is that what you find as well?
No, I completely agree, and I think what often the limit is a belief in performance, and the chief exec has a strategy, has a vision, and it's the responsibility of his exec team to execute on that strategy. But a lot of the time, people believe there's a limit on performance, and in truth, there's no absolute limit on performance. And one of the analogies I like to use is Roger Bannister. If you look at back in 1954, no one believed a 4-minute mile was possible. Then in 1954, Roger Bannister and I think John Landry actually then improved upon that time in 1954. Now, majority of runners can do an under 4-minute mile.
Yes, I think
it's that belief in the performance.
Yeah, but it's interesting actually, because I think if my memory serves me right, in 1955, over 100 people had broken the 4-minute mile.
Yeah, because
they completely banished that thought process.
Yeah, it's that absolute performance limitation people have in their mindset. And it's one of the things that I think is a barrier to successful transformation, because people talk themselves out of the change. And the culture defeats transformation every time. And one of the things that I like to do, and I did it recently last year, sadly within a team in Ukraine who are now unfortunately having some torrid times. But we took the team through a set of structured exercises where, what does good look like? Let's cast forward to the future. We are a very successful small development software lab. In 3 years' time, we're at Mobile World Congress and they're talking about the work we've done. What do we want people to say about us? How are we going to go about achieving that to get that outcome, and actually getting that belief into people and making people believe what is possible, because when they believe it, they can do it. It's only when they don't believe it, the limitations come around.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, actually. What does good look like? And when you've used that, I'm sure you get completely diverse reactions and responses, because again, it's about their sphere of influence, it's about their experience, it's about how comfortable they are about moving outside of the comfort zones, isn't it?
It is, and there's a lovely follow-up exercise I do with this, which is the good cafe, bad cafe, and the basic concept is that you split the group in half, and you say to one group, right, if we royally screw this up, what does bad look like?
Yeah.
If we smash this out of the park and get it right, what does good look like? You swap the groups over, and you get them to do the same exercise. Then you actually take all the post-it pads they've written on, assemble them on a wall, and actually suddenly find you've actually got a transformation plan. Because all of the information, that rich information they provide, and they're not realizing they're given, actually then starts to shape your journey.
Yeah, I've made a note of that. I think I will be using that one soon. So on your LinkedIn profile, you say you have a track record of successful recovery and turnaround of failing programs and functions that delivered measurable results in terms of operational performance metrics and structured KPIs. I'm very interested in understanding those two aspects of that, the operational performance metrics and the structural KPIs, just to go a little bit deeper in terms of your experience on those.
Yeah, so, and if I take a cost transformation program I did for a telecommunications business, there'll be a good example of it. I came in, the program had an objective of removing 120 million of in-year cost with a run rate of $250 million. That was going to be achieved through a new target operating model and a number of underpinning initiatives that was identified where we had opportunities to reduce cost. We also had a separate initiative to actually, as a free cash flow initiative, which was around disposal of assets and realization of cash in order to come in and provide free cash flow. One of the real challenges within that business was that we actually didn't have a way of accurately managing the cost as the costs were taken out of the business, and actually underpinning and understanding how that was being underpinned in the P&L. So I actually had my own CFO within my transformation office, and I tasked him with actually defining a model that allowed us to track, and we used the McKinsey Wave tool, so their gating process, to define what the financial outcomes and benefits were going to be. And we actually then tracked those in the P&L. And each initiative, we were able to track actually at a P&L level if that cost was genuinely coming out, and then being able to track if that cost was washing back in. So that's a good example of that. In that program, again, it comes back to belief. That program was 34 markets across the Caribbean, Latin America, and Pacific Ocean. And one of the problems we had was that people didn't believe taking such a large sum of money out of the organization and actually reducing headcount by 25%, changing the spans of control, delayering the organization was possible in such a short space of time. And we actually took them through the journey. We pulled back the underperformance. We proved structurally that the program was delivering. We actually had that independently audited and validated as well. And in fact, at the end of it, we over-delivered. We delivered to 128 million or so with the targeted run rate. But the real key was to be able to use my CFO to really validate the market returns and to understand the P&L impacts and to validate that P&L impact to make sure they were real dollars.
Yeah, and I think that's the critical part of this, isn't it? Because all too often, the transformation agenda is there to deliver some financial benefits, whether it's cost out or revenue generating, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But the mechanics of measuring and tracking those are really quite weak in many cases. So you get to the end of the process or the program, and you've delivered the new the business model or target operating model or whatever it is. But can you actually ever go back and definitively say, yeah, that business case that we said we're going to deliver X revenue increase or X cost out, can we put a tick against it? And all too often, it's pretty difficult to put a tick against it.
It is, but that comes down to the construct of the transformation. Yeah. And the transformation office is a control tower. The role of the transformation office is to keep the rhythm and the tempo of the program going. It's there to make sure that it's guiding the initiatives. It's there to show what good looks like. It's there to communicate progress and change, but also to be a control function where you can hold people to account and proactively. And on a weekly basis, I actually had each of my transformational work streams in front of me with their team, with my team, going through their progress. And we were looking at both the hard and soft measures. And I was fortunate. I had a team that was well resourced, and we actually managed to be very effective. Unfortunately, too many transformation offices are underfunded. They are not a control tower. They're an admin function. They're there to do the planning and to take the notes and to do the progress reports. Successful integration management offices and transformation offices are well funded, well staffed, and they actually have the critical roles assigned to real people who actually make sure performance of execution.
Yeah, and I think that's the key differentiation, isn't it? It's those that are begging and borrowing resource from operational teams don't have that rigor in place to be able to monitor it, and all too often find is that and I was coming back to your point about KPIs, is that the transformation is driving a revised what will ultimately result in a revised set of KPIs. But the operational teams are still being measured against the old ones, and there's this sort of diversity of we want to go down one path, but actually everyone's being measured on something that's old style and going down a different path, and that can create so many barriers.
Agree, and that's why, to me, actually having a good financial analyst and a senior financial leader in my transformation office is so critical, because we've all got unique skills. Their skills are making sure that the business is actually delivering on the financial performance it's looking for from the transformation, whereas my role is to actually make sure that those charged with each of the transformation themes are executing on their performance. So that validation. So as a transformation leader, I can actually help them get into the detail and support them in execution, while my finance team are actually making sure that we're delivering our financial numbers as well.
Okay, so we've about your role is setting that up in putting that sort of financial control piece in. What other aspects do you find is an absolute necessity to ensure the momentum of the transformation is created and delivered as you go through?
Yeah, so
sometimes can be multi-year initiatives.
It can be, and that's why I'm a firm believer of an IMO TO style office. You use a burning platform to shape the agenda. What is the CEO's agenda? How is he looking to drive change? What is the outcome he's looking for? How can we define those outcomes? Is that an increase in NPS? Is that a EBITDA improvement process? Is that a reinvestment measure? What are those measures, and defining them? Then understanding the transformation agenda and making it real. What's the planning? What's the reality check? What's the performance? What's the timing? What's the method of holding people to account? You've got to have a rigor of process around people being held to account for their progress. And it's a rhythm. And the rhythm I get into is that, right, Tony, last week you said you'd have achieved A, B, C, and D. Right. What have we achieved? What have we missed? What have we put? And what have we got to do? And actually having that conversation on a weekly basis to keep that rhythm of delivery going. Because if it's not weekly and you rely on monthly, well, you're always 4 weeks behind a problem. And bad news travels far slower than good news. So the chances are you're 8 weeks behind a problem, not 4.
True.
To me, what are the strategic indicators? What are we looking for from the change? And especially when it's cross-functional. Are we measuring the number of people out the door? Are we measuring the performance of a transition from an in-source to an outsource model? Are we looking for a consolidation of platforms? Meaning, one of the programs I ran, as I said earlier on, was an ERP house implementing their own ERP solution globally. We were doing that with a coterminous deployment of BPO. So as we were rolling out into a market a new ERP platform, we were also rolling out the BPO. And you've got to understand the process of doing that, and support the business, because the business wants to go fast, but sometimes you need to help them to go slow to go fast, because we want to move everything to the BPO. We want to be able to get the savings by releasing the headcount, but you've got this transitional piece where you've actually got to phase in the capability of the BPO and trimming on the new platform, and then phase out the old internal capability, so you can then safely transition. And I've seen organizations where, one example, the organization started having its credit ratings reduced in one market because it was a state-controlled credit scoring. And because the transition into the BPO and the new ERP platform was flawed, invoices were getting missed, they weren't being sent to the outsourcer, suppliers weren't getting paid, And this company was doing nothing wrong, and it wasn't avoiding paying its debts. It's just that there was a process breakdown because they went too fast and too aggressively at the transition, with no one actually making sure that there was, we were doing the job correctly, we weren't breaking in performance. And they almost became disqualified from government contracts as a consequence of that. So, to me, it's all about that control point and actually helping the business not fall over itself, and being able to capture those issues and those mistakes before they become material.
Yeah, it's almost a case of being able to take a helicopter view, oversight on everything, so you can see the big picture and how it all fits together, but then be able to jump right into the detail when you need to pull out the relevant things to highlight it to the relevant person on the exec team.
No, exactly. And this is why the transformation governance structure is so critical. And the transformation board. So how often does the chief exec chair the transformation board? I mean, to me, it's a non-negotiable. If I work hand in glove with the chief exec on the transformation, but when I'm having a transformation board, I need the chief exec there, holding people to account, so they see him and I talking from the same script. So when I say something has to be done, they understand I'm talking with the same authority as if it was the chief exec, because in order to get this done, you need that devolved authority in order to execute on his transformation plan for him.
No, agreed. So this is go on to a question now, and I know we've had a few conversations about this in the past, but there is this belief that as you go through any change, and certainly change like transformation, it can be stressful for people, because the first thought is, what's the impact upon me? And because of the uncertainty, that can create stress. But equally, it can be stressful for the people that are leading the program. When I said that to you a few weeks ago, you said no, it needs to be stressful. So just explain a little bit about your experience of what you do to minimize stress within that change and transformation process.
Yeah, and I learned this, very early in my career. I had I was doing an integration program, and there was some very specialist software with only one chap who really truly understood it end to end, and he was closed off. He was raising grievance procedures about how the grievance procedure was being dealt with. He'd gone from being a really high performer to a low performer. As a consequence, because he'd been told that, as a consequence of the integration, his role would be disappearing from the business. And, I took him to one side and just, took him for a coffee. I couldn't understand what was going on. And as the conversation unfolded, I realized that basically he was scared of the unknown. He'd been in this business from, an apprentice into a senior engineer. He knew no other business. And what was really frightening him was the next journey and the level of unknowns around that journey. So I've learned to communicate and to over communicate perhaps with people. To talk people through the change, to get them to understand it. And another example, I was talking to a group of junior staff when I was at Digicel, and Digicel had a regional corporate jet. And the reason I had the regional corporate jet was that if you wanted to get from Kingston to El Salvador or the French West Indies or something or other, you'd have to go into Miami, get something from Miami, and it's a 2-day journey. So it wasn't practical. So as a group, we would go around and onto the islands. And they were saying, look, you're taking all this cost out, but you jump on the corporate jet and go to New York for a board meeting or to one of the islands, and you've got all of that cost. And then I started explaining about the efficiency of the region for using it, but also about the secondary benefit. And in the Caribbean, it's quite common for hurricanes to blow through and to really do devastation through an island. And that happened during my tenure there. Now, our corporate jet, which people perceived as a luxury, was doing 10 takeoff and landings a day, dropping in disaster relief, aid into these countries to help us to get the network back and to provide, clothing, bedding, food, etc., for the population who genuinely needed help. And it wasn't until I explained that, actually you may see, what you consider the unpleasant side of it, which is that we're all bouncing around on this thing. But if you're in Martinique and a hurricane's just come through and your home has been pancaked, seeing this plane land with all of this relief stuff on board is a real bonus of the market, and it's something which we use as a company to give back. But just explaining that to them, they went from being, oh, that's a corporate excess, to okay, understand why it's needed, and actually, God, I didn't realise that there was such a humanitarian element to it, and as a company, we can help so many people by doing this disaster relief. So, that's the extreme version. But just being able to take people's fears, understand them, and translate them and into a positive is essential in transformation.
Yeah, it reminded me of a story many years ago about people get upset or not confused, worried, stressed when they don't know what they don't know.
Yep.
And they start making it up. And all too often they make up things that are far worse than it's ever going to be. Yep. And that creates stress. So if you can alleviate that from day one by, this is what's happening, we don't know the answers to this as yet, but we will do by this point, you're taking away that uncertainty, aren't you? And
I think the other thing,
replacing that uncertainty with a bit of certainty.
Yeah, I completely agree. But I think the other thing as well is that there are certain difficult character sets you have in a business where people shy away from delivering that bad news to them. And I've been in a situation several times where we've told a chap he's leaving the company, but we haven't told him when. Yeah. And we keep giving him projects, we keep leveraging his skills, and he's getting more and more disparaged and angry, but people won't actually tell him what's going on because they're fear of the reaction, and people give people enough information to make their own decisions, to shape their journey, and have the difficult conversations. Don't shy away from them.
And I think there's a real business case for doing that as well, because I'm sure you've had experiences with the programs you've been working on, but where you don't communicate openly, people will make their own mind up, and the good people will jump ship before they're getting pushed if they believe they're dangerous, and you're then left with people that actually you probably wouldn't choose to have, but then you can't do anything because your good people have left.
It's something I always say: good people go first. But the other thing as well is that we live in a world where we talk about culture principles, but we then actually say the culture principles only apply to the new part of the operating model. Guys, you need to treat the whole population with the same set of culture values and culture principles. It doesn't matter if they're being displaced or they're interim or they're short-term workers or they're permanent members of staff. You need to treat everybody equally and fairly. You can't differentiate between the populations.
Agreed. So, what are you, in terms of your team and what you expect from your sort of team as you lead in a transformation? What are your sort of non-negotiables? What are the non-negotiable behaviours that you expect from that team?
There's just simply one, which is be honest. It's honesty to me is the foundation for it all, because so many times people hide bad news, and often there's a fear of shooting the messenger. So I always create the psychological safety for people to be honest and transparent, because the sooner I become aware of a problem, the sooner I can actually get ahead of it and address it. So to me, there's only one, which is about honesty and transparency, because from there everything else flows. Because if you create create the opportunity for people to have the psychological safety to share information with you, good and bad, performance flows.
Brilliant. And the final question then, in terms of all your experience, if you could boil it down to just one big takeaway, what would that be?
It's about culture and change. Too many times I have seen the culture defeat transformation because people have not spent the time actually getting people to understand the change point, understanding what's in it for them, and understanding why the business needs to make this change. And the culture starts with the leadership team. And it's great. And so many times I have this conversation around the exec table and say, guys, it starts with us. We need to go away, get our act together, get on the same page, agree the strategy, talk with the same voice, and push that down. And I get, oh no, we're there, we already know it, we're fine. We need to do that with our teams. And in truth, the exec team is not aligned. They need to be aligned. And the change starts within the exec team. And then once that change is effective, everybody's on the same script, the chief exec's happy, and we can stand behind and give the same message, the same elevator pitch in a different elevator on a different day. Then you've got the ability to transform that business.
Brilliant. Well, thanks a lot, Shaun. I know you touched on it earlier about the work that you did in Ukraine, and I know you're doing quite a lot of stuff to provide some support in these terrible times. Do you want to spend a couple of minutes just explaining that and seeing whether or not other people might want to get involved?
Yeah. So I'm part of one of the co-founders of TechLink Ukraine, and that's a group of business leaders and technologists who are banded together in order to support those displaced by the conflict to find employment, to get access to money, to get access to transport and accommodation. So far, we've managed to find over 24 people roles, predominantly in Ireland. What we find we need is the ability for people to be able to get equipment. Telefonica are talking to us about supporting us in terms of providing accommodation. Once they get here, if they want a place to work and connectivity, they will help us with accommodation. But they haven't got phones, they haven't got tablets, they haven't got laptops. I'm pushing Google and Amazon and people like that to actually help us with connectivity. I'm talking to 3 UK later in the week about supporting us and how they can operate. And the same with Vodafone and Google, because these people, they're getting to locations in Poland, etc. But there's a challenge getting the money. So how do you get prepaid mobile money to them? If they haven't got a mobile phone, how do they access banking? There's lots of challenges. So anybody who can help and come on board and support TechLink Ukraine, I'll gladly welcome. But it's we're not short of willing employers. We're not short of people willing to come and to work. It's the infrastructure that will enable people who are displaced to come and work.
Yeah,
it's a subject. Sorry.
So I was just going to say, what's the best way that people can get in touch? Is there a website, or is it just directly through yourself?
Directly through me, and there's some posting on my LinkedIn profile for the other members.
Brilliant.
But this is it's been hit home to me. In November, I was sitting in Kiev having dinner with my team. Yesterday, I found out that there's a number of guys who are now actually on the front line. Back in November, we were talking about the challenges of building mobile solutions. These guys are now dodging bullets. It's very scary.
Unimaginable, isn't it?
Yeah,
very scary. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, good luck on that. And if there's anything I can do to help them,
thank you.
Let's keep talking. But once again, thank you very much, Shaun. It was a great session, great episode, and
cool.
Let's keep talking.
Thanks, Tony. Really appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thanks, Shaun. That was a great episode, and I'm sure that our listeners will be able to apply many of the things we have covered into the programs that they are leading right now. Ultimately, this is the core purpose of this podcast, to share proven approaches that can help you successfully deliver transformation within your organisation. The Transformation Leaders Hub is a community focused exclusively on those operating within change and transformation. If you've not checked it out as yet, please do so today by clicking on the link in the show notes. I look forward to sharing another episode with you in a couple of weeks. Bye for now.